All right. So delighted that at least two of you are on this morning, and I apologize today that I got off to a little bit of a late start today. Just for those of you who are part of the community that I serve in Lafayette, yesterday we had this big sewer problem here on site, and I was here early in the morning to meet the plumber, and he never showed up. So I'm like, oh, great. And then I got a call at dinner time that he was on his way. So I spent the evening down here with the plumber trying to deal with that, and so subsequently got a little bit off my schedule, and but I feel like I'm back on it now, so that's a good thing. It also reminds me for as we kind of start to dial in here a little bit today. It sort of reminds me of how tricky it is to navigate the transition from the frazzle of the everyday, the just the buzz of what we have to navigate every day, and the layers of complexity, pressures, anxieties, fears, hopes, all that stuff is just this bundle of content that we're constantly swimming in, right? And then we also know that we need moments like this. You need a moment like this. I need a moment like this to kind of slow down the pace and allow, it's almost like you're allowing your soul or your spirit or your whole self some space to simply show up for a while. And in that experience, there is a level of rejuvenation, of freedom, so that you can take this deep breath and then begin to, move back into those frazzled spaces again. And our lives just seem kind of like that so often. One of the ways in which I have discovered, and it's been a pure gift for me, to be honest with you, and I would encourage you to do, maybe even do the same thing at some level, is that for this time together, I've committed to having a conversation with just one person, maybe a couple people, each week, and to carve out the time to simply be present for them and to allow their life journey to kind of find language in a conversation, and yet maybe even to go a little deeper than that, to allow the conversation to be a moment when we can really hear one another, or that person can truly be heard for who they are, taking into this kind of spiritual world that you and I together are attempting to navigate. And in every one of those conversations, I find that there is this kind of open window or possibility that allows me to understand my own journey a little bit better. And I think that happens for them as well. And to figure out a way to translate that into this conversation that we're having this morning is sort of the goal, to allow you too to hear the story of that individual clearly enough so that it might allow you time for pause and reflection so that you can move more deeply into the journey that you're on. So that's what we're up to this morning. The woman that I met with this last week, her name was Victoria, and I've been really kind of not thrown off guard, but her insights into the way in which she longs to construct her own engagement with the world really left me with this challenge of how do we how do we simply prepare ourselves? And this is what I think she was kind of exploring. To kind of, the work is really to just simply be prepared to allow for the wonder and the mystery and the, maybe you might call it the more, the spirit, the capacity of all of the interwoven connections that make us who we are, to rise up and, in a sense, hold us more fully. Right? It's, from her perspective, it's not that we're trying to build our way into something. You know, we talk about that in church a lot. You know, we use language about, you know, building a church, come build a church, or to, you know, build a solid foundation. You know, we have these notions that we're actually the ones who are constructing this thing. And there is a little bit of truth to that, but there's also truth, and this is what I realized in talking to her, there is truth in just kind of building the capacity for vulnerability or openness that allows that which is to be so present for you that that is the relationship in which you find you can be fully yourself, and that which is coming up or finding space is being itself too, right? You're in this space of deep relationship with all that is and all that you are. Not by overthinking it or crafting it, but just being open to it. And in the opening, it's not an opening for you necessarily to show up, or spirit to show up, or it to show up. And in that moment, right, is the deepest of relationships, and the essence of particularly her spirituality, but the possibility for many of us to feel this kind of spiritual bond. The one thing that I discovered as well in this conversation is that that experience is not held in language as well as the stuff we craft. Right? We're masters of language. I come in here and I talk to you the whole time, and we have a conversation, and we try to hang everything on language. But I'm not so certain, after having a conversation with her, that the way in which we use language to articulate, express, share our spiritual insights is the best instrument for this. You almost have to just be in it. You almost have to just arrive and be present for it. And it has its own language, its own sensation, its own kind of feeling interaction that happens. So you almost feel it more than you think it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's why this was such a great and I think challenging and beautiful conversation for me to have, is because it's really pushing me to think in terms of moving beyond capacity of language to get at this thing. In our conversation that we had, we talked for a second about how the Buddha, too, oftentimes tried to transmit the wisdom that he had by not using language, but by the passing of a flower to a disciple, or the use of a koan. And Jesus, too, in the Christian tradition, uses language that feels like funny language, right? It's almost poetic language, metaphor, story, almost like pushing language to its limits, to where the language breaks down and something else happens, right? You think the logic you're using inside of your language set doesn't even make any sense anymore, and that's the whole point, right? It's pushing beyond the capacity of language. For Victoria, she clearly self-identifies as a kind of a Gen X person, and was describing beautifully, I think, the sort of the inner angst of her particular generation that she wrestles with. And one of the things that she was reflecting on that I thought was so beautiful is that for her, the next generation seems to easily pick up the capacity of technology to interact with the world. And she felt like she hadn't quite made that transition. And, and the reason was, this is what was so fascinating, is that she didn't want to give up the capacity for relationship that you have with even just general stuff in the navigating of the everyday world that we live in. Let me just give you a quick example. Like for her, she still wants to sit down with a book, right? She doesn't need to download a app into her Kindle and or listen to the podcast like we do, or all this tech stuff. She wants to be with the book. And as she was describing that, the turning of the pages, the weight of the thing, the smell, the texture, it's almost like the relationship with the story is enriched by the experience of the thing itself. And I can tell for her, she did not have any interest in letting go of that, because that held some capacity for allowing the experience of this story that she's reading, or the book, and to be fully present for her in a way that doesn't happen when you can just simply get into a transactional relationship with a piece of tech that gets you the content. Hopefully this doesn't make any sense to you. Hopefully this is pushing you too to think in terms of, yeah, what is going on there? And I admit, in listening to her, I was thinking, how quickly we tend to dismiss those kind of moments and look for the easier path, right? The quicker fix. And clearly that is not something that she's interested in. And I think that's the wisdom that she brought to our conversation, and hopefully to you too, is that there is something about showing up and allowing other, either person, human, non-human, world, to show up as well. To this sort of epiphany moment of both being present at the same time. And in that moment, there is some space that happens. In fact, towards the end of the conversation, she was reflecting that as we were having the conversation, it's almost as if world was more present for her. The breeze was, the sensation of breeze was more, encased her more, or affected her more. The bird song, or the temperature, or the quiet of the space, all was more present. It was like being more present by just simply showing up for one another in a moment. Isn't that a beautiful, it's just a beautiful way of thinking about spirituality, and the challenge of translating that kind of path or methodology into how we relate together, either in this format, trying to be somewhat open to one another as you share your insights throughout the week, as you reflect and respond to this talk, knowing that we're kind of here for each other in this space. That's the kind of stuff that actually does matter, right? And how that translates into common life is something to, I think, reflect on. One of the things that came up for me as I listened to Victoria was the notion by a Jewish theologian and philosopher by the name of Martin Buber, famous, thoughtful person, I think, who kind of opened up some new frontier using the framework of Judaism. And he wrote a book, a famous book called I, Thou. And I just want to spend a moment with Martin Buber on two fronts. One, I Thou was born out of a larger historical context of many people in the Hebrew tradition whose dependency on kind of the scholarly engagement with the law or their text was no longer viable for them. It wasn't working for the masses. And so there was a movement within Judaism that was a little bit more mystical. You know, whether it be prayer or meditation or kind of mysticism. And there was this whole movement that was happening. And Martin Buber kind of is birthed out of that construct, that shifting construct, and says, as he saw it, there were two ways of being in relationship to world. And one is, and you can Google this and just figure out how it works, but one is an I-it relationship. And an I-it relationship is what most of our relationships are about, right? I am the primary, and it is something that I am in relationship with in kind of a transactional way. It serves as a function for me. And we can put all sorts of things in the it category. All the technology we use, things, items, anything could be an it, right? We're not allowing its fullness. It's transactional. Like the conversation we were having about the book, right? The book is just this tool that I'm using to get the reading done. My relationship with another person can be an I-it, in that I am orienting to world and I'm using my relationship with that person as a sort of a functional relationship. And I'm totally guilty about that. I mean, I'm sure you are too, but I'm so guilty of this, in that most of my transactions with other human beings are what do I have to get out of this, and getting that to happen. The person is not a person at all, right? The person is just me trying to get the thing done or get it accomplished. We know what that's like. Even our most intimate relationships can have aspects of that to it. So Buber said, predominantly the world can function like this I-it sort of world. But he said, but there's another possibility. And Buber called it the I-thou relationship. And all of a sudden, the it is allowed fullness. And I see in a relationship of I-thou that which I am in relationship with is actually a full reflection of all that is, right? That person or that thing at the moment is everything to me. You, in this moment, become everything for me. And as I bring my whole self and allow your whole self to be lifted up together, we are in this moment that is what Buber thinks of, the kind of the magic in that moment is actually God. That was his phrase, right? That is the energy in that moment is what we think of as God. It is the true communion of I and thou. Buber puts it this way. Let me read a quote from him. He says, when two people, and it doesn't have to be two people, right? It could just be me and the oak tree, frankly. When two people relate to each other authentically, humanely, God is the electricity that surges between them. When two people relate, or when you relate to that which you perceive as it, as thou, when that relationship is changed so that the thou holds, it is everything to you, the electricity that surges in that moment is God. Isn't that beautiful? I don't know how you practice that kind of I thou, but that's what Martin Buber is inviting you to think about, is to find God not in the construction of some language that puts God in a box that you can understand or make sense of, right? That's not how God works. It's much more of a vulnerable process of being truly present in the world in a way that is authentic, intimate, open, vulnerable, so that the thou and you, I and thou, can be in this communion together. That I am changed and the thou is changed because of the transaction. The wonder of that moment is the religious experience, is what life is all about, right? And those who have those moments, they can feel like that, right? You want them to last forever. You ever been in a conversation with somebody that's just so deep and rich that the time just fades away and you're like so dialed in with them, and you're like, I want this to be my everyday. And you can't keep it going all the time, but you have a sense of that really matters, right? That moment really mattered. I, I was I was present for that experience, and that experience was present for me. All the people I've interviewed thus far, in some ways, describe whether it be through the act of showing up for ritual, showing up in nature, being present for the other. They're all kind of connecting to this conversation that we're having today in some way. And I think, and I'm hoping that you can kind of connect to it as well. I think I want to shift gears a little bit, and because when I was talking to Victoria, we were saying, how difficult it is for language to kind of describe this. And I want to shift to a Wendell Berry piece of poetry by Wendell Berry, and then close with a final piece by Buber. And I use Wendell Berry today particularly because partly I was driven by the way in which the oak trees are all dropping their acorns right now. It's this funny thing that happens every few years. It's called a massed harvest, where all the trees, I don't know, you probably noticed in your yard, right? All the oak trees drop all their acorns all at the same time. They're everywhere, right? And the scientists don't know why oak trees pick the moment they pick, however they do that, to just explode all of their acorns in an act to sustain their livelihood, right? They were trying to stimulate life by planting their seeds in the ground. And there's all sorts of theories about why that happens. But it's this beautiful mystery that happens, and we tend to pass it by as sort of a nuisance, right? I got to sweep up all the acorns. They're all over my driveway. I frankly, don't even notice that it's happening. But it's this miraculous relationship that oaks have with their environment that allows for oaks to thrive, and then also sustains all sorts of other animal life. And it's a miracle that's happening, and we don't even notice it because we're in an I-it relationship with all those darn acorns that are in our driveways. We're not like, oh my goodness, how can we allow nature to show up as the what would you be in its wholeness for us? Wendell Berry is super good about that, and he writes this beautiful poem about a small stream that he walks down and through in his kind of daily walk. The stream is called the Camp Branch, and this poem is called The Book of Camp Branch. So Camp Branch is a stream. And I want you just to hear the way in which, in this piece of poetry, Wendell Berry plays with the capacity of this flowing water and its destination, its constant capacity for change, the way in which river tells its own story. And as you walk in the river, this is kind of metaphor now, you realize that your story too is ever changing, that your story changes with the telling of it, the walking of it. And to honor that there is this process of, of becoming whole, or your full self, that is that changes. It's a part of this journey of the river. All right, so listen to this once, and I'll try to, if I get time, I'll try to type it up. I'm using his piece of poetry, but I'm jumping around in this, in his piece, to try to piece this together for you. The Book of Camp Branch. Camp Branch, my native stream, forever unreturning, flows from the town down to Cane Run, which flows to the river, passing ever downward to the sea. It flows as deep in its hollow as it can go, far down as it has worn its way, passing down under its plunder of rocks. It makes music. How much delight I've known in navigating down the flow by stepping stones, by sounding stones. The footing, it changes year to year, sometimes day to day. As the surges of the stream move the rocks, every walk becomes a new walk. So I go slow. I let the mind step with the feet as the stream steps downward over the rocks. Make sense of it all, I tell myself. The song of the tumbling waters in my ear. But the sense you make may make its way along the stream, but it will never be the stream's sense you make, nor yet your own. For the song changes by singing into a different song. It flows as deep in its hollow as it can go, far down as it has worn its way, passing down over its plunder of rocks. It makes its music. It sings its song. This is a beautiful piece of poetry. It holds for me, and I don't know about for you, but it holds for me this sort of invitation that I think Victoria invited me into as she shared with me her own soul's journey. And that is, how do I walk in this great river, fully present for, what river is, and how it's being fully its river self, right? Ever changing, ever singing its song, ever winding its way into the open sea, right? That is, I navigate inside of this river, and it sings its song while I'm trying to sing my song as well. And in the singing of the songs, we are both changed, and we are both forever growing in our capacity to kind of wander into and through life at its deepest level, the deepest, that we can manage to go, the way we can navigate the boulders along the way and how they shift and change as we do. That just image is so beautiful to me. And I think it captures a little bit what Martin Buber's trying to say with the idea of how am I fully in an I-thou relationship with all that is, and that I bring that capacity to my religious experience and expression, to be in this I thou moment. And and then how am I okay with expecting that in that experience the song will change, right? The song changes by the singing of it. I love that line. So we need to sing the song together and allow ourselves to be open enough and soft enough to be changed along the way. Martin Buber puts it this way when he thinks about the way in which kind of institutions tend to want to grab everything, and I've been guilty of this too. Religions and institutions and traditions sometimes tend to take that beautiful process and get it into a box or a construct that everybody can agree upon, and then lock it up tight and then try to market it or sell it, right? Churches do that all the time. I've done that in my career. Martin Buber says this: I do not accept any absolute formulas for living. Isn't that great? I love this. I do not accept any absolute formulas for living. No preconceived code can see ahead to everything that can happen in one's life. For as we live, we grow and our beliefs change. They must change. So I think we should live within this constant gift of discovery. We should be open to this adventure in a heightened awareness of living. We should stake our whole existence on our willingness to explore and experience. And the exploration and the experience that Buber is referencing is this authentic one of the I thou, the one that we long to enter into more fully, the one that I think transpired when Victoria and I just sat down and were present for each other for an hour. That is the, for lack of a better term, right? That is the venue that invites you into the gift of awareness, where Victoria's full self is being present as I and thou, my full self is being present. And just in that moment alone is the possibility for the real gift of life to be experienced. And in that kind of eternal moment, it filters down and it has effect on who you are, right? It changes something inside of you so that your story might change as you move down the river ever more deeply towards the sea. Whew. Oh my goodness. That's it for today, right? How can you let all that show up for you? Maybe for 10 minutes today, or after you're done listening to me today, go outside and just let something out there, anything, be fully itself with you for a moment. If it's the oak tree, I know this is a little weird, but if it's the oak tree, like put your hands on the tree and in a moment of gratitude, feel tree being all that tree can be. And in that relationship, feel whole again. Or maybe it's your kids running around and you're like, they're driving you nuts right now because they're like, you got things to do today. Just let them be themselves for just a few minutes. Just stare at them or something, let them be fully themselves, and you be fully present with them for just a minute or something, to just tap into what I think Victoria was trying to describe or tap into, which has become her own spiritual practice. Let me close by just sharing one more thing that she shared with me, and that is she was talking about the way in which she participates in what is known as restorative yoga. And I was fascinated with the idea because it takes yoga and it kind of reframes it. Restorative yoga is just the yoga practice that is not trying to, stretch yourself or, all those things that building capacity. It's the resting part of yoga. And but it's resting in order to be restored again. So that you're softening your pose. This is the way I understand it anyway, in my quick reflection on it, but it's sort of softening your pose so that all that holds you in life might cradle you in this moment of deep I thou kind of experience, right? It dawns on me that I'm not just resting on a pad, but I'm resting in an amazing universe, right? That all of a sudden is able to rise up and hold me in that moment. And I feel that. I'm restored in that moment. Or as Buber likes to say, when two people can relate to each other in that kind of moment, that electricity is the sacred itself. All right, those are some reflections for this week. I'm looking forward to more conversations and just bringing you more chances to give some to what your own spiritual path might look like, informed by the ways in which others around you are finding their way down the river to the great ocean that holds us all. See you next week.